Major sponsors for Ableton On Air include Washington County Mental Health, where hope and support come together. Media sponsors for Ableton On Air include Parkchester Times, Muslim Community Report, www.thisisthebronx.info, Associated Press Media Editors, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, U.S. Press Corps Domestic and International, Anchor FM, and Spotify. Partners for Ableton On Air include Yahad of New York and New England, where everyone belongs, the Orthodox Union, the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired of Vermont, the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Central Vermont Habitat for Humanity, Montefiore Medical Center of the Bronx, Rose F. Kennedy Center of Bronx, New York, Albert Einstein College of Medicine of the Bronx. Ableton On Air has been seen in the following publications: Parkchester Times, www.thisisthebronx.com, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, Muslim Community Report, www.h.com, and the Montpelier Bridge. Ableton On Air is part of the following organizations: the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Boston, New England chapter, and the Society of Professional Journalists. Okay, got your banner. In 3, 2, 1, state your name and spell it, please.
My name is Steve Charest, S-T-E-V-E-C-H-A-R-E-S-T.
Can you speak slowly and speak that again slowly?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Steve Charest, S-T-E-V-E-C-H-A-R-E-S-T.
Okay. What is the name of your organization and the missions and goals?
The name of my company is Petroglyphs Climbing Center and Mountaineering School, and its goals is to introduce climbing to people of all ages and all abilities, whether you want to go rock climbing, backcountry skiing, ice climbing, avalanche education, or simply just climbing for fun.
What got you into climbing and the reason behind it?
I was lucky that I was able to go climbing when I was 10 years old for the first time ever, and when I went climbing that first time, it became that thing that just was like the spark inside my head. It was something I was passionate about and always talked about. Any family vacation trip I went on, if I saw a cliff, we'd figure out if we could find a local guide service or somebody who could take me climbing. And I just kept climbing over and over again until it came down to a time when I needed to make a decision about what to do next. And when I started looking at colleges, I decided I wanted to pursue outdoor education and really pursue being a climbing and ski guide.
What are the misconceptions around people with disabilities when people first meet them?
Honestly, there's a variety of different things, especially with something like head trauma, is the fact that people don't necessarily even know that I've experienced it. In fact, now that my story is getting out there and people who follow Petroglyphs, they might know a little bit about that, and then they have questions. Many for me, as I know I'm not the typical example, are shocked and amazed that I often can outperform or keep up or even set good examples. But yeah, it's that there is an expectation or thought that things might be different or not, what to experience or see. And so we have these opportunities to kind of show what's possible.
Now, you have a wife
I do.
and family and people that support you. How does that support make you stronger?
Truthfully, the whole reason why I've ever been able to recover and continue to do all the things and why I've stayed in Vermont as long as I have, it's been the community. Never think about life being on a track, but it was like simply starting a simple internship at Petroglyphs. I met my wife, I found my house, I found my passions, I found my educational opportunities, I've been able to take this in guiding, climbing, and skiing around the world. And no, I don't have infinite money, and people see these pictures and think, how did he get to go climb there or do this? And a lot of times I get paid by other folks to go on these adventures and kind of show them new worlds and things like that. And that means that I often have to go do these trips to get the information.
What is the future of your agency?
The future
How do
is,
you see the future of your agency?
yeah,
That's the last question.
yeah, the future is that we're hoping to actually expand into a brand new facility. Our current facility is now 25 years old. It's amazing, but we are a dinosaur in the climbing gym industry, and so we're hoping to build a new gym, literally 100 yards from our current facility, that is both double the square footage, double the height, and double the opportunities. We'll have more outdoor programs, more opportunities for summer camps and adaptive climbers and climbing teams, and we'll even have Olympic climbing walls so that if we have the future Olympians that want to climb in the state of Vermont, they'll have a beautiful place to train.
Thank you for joining me on this edition of Abel's Been on Air.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. It was helped me on my recovery. I figured out, hey, I first went back to petroglyphs. I was still in a boot and had a walker. Guess what I did that day? Put on a harness and climbed the wall. Right? I remember actually getting back down and having to use the walker to get back over, being and figuring out, hey, can I go upstairs? Can I teach ballet lessons in a wheelchair? Yes. These different opportunities existed. It doesn't have to be these crazy, some of the photos and things. They are supposed to be a little shocking and impressive and awing. But honestly, climbing is what all of a sudden I discovered was not about climbing as hard as you can. It's the good news. It's you versus gravity, you versus the wall. It's your own process. You get to decide how much risk and acceptance do I want to kind of get after this. And I've made terrible ideas. This is me back in the day, not so good, bad. But petroglyphs has been literally a place that I've grown up. I've matured. I've become kind of the person I am. Weren't always good decisions, like, for example, bleach hair and puka shell necklaces. But that's Chris Sharma, one of the most famous climbers. I know everybody now is like, is that Alex Honnold? No, not Alex Honnold. Chris Sharma is actually one of the old school hardest climbers in the world, and got to hang out with him and others here in Burlington and climbing gyms and different things. So all sorts of different opportunities, and we have these different features and things that you can do, whether you want to just climb a simple birthday party wall or you want to get after it and train for your objectives around the world. Is something that I also had. And so that was part of me. What I was thinking about is, what is my rehab? So when I first got out, and I know that here today is one of the first things I did was, hey, I'm trying to get mobile. I'm trying to get active. I'm trying to find different things. Like some of the Brain Injury Alliance, sitting around a round table and talking about my head injury was something that just didn't necessarily work for me. Because I was the guy that was like, I'm going skiing, and I'm going to go climbing, and I want to go do all this. And a lot of the people were like, I'm trying to figure out how to sleep and get to my job. And I was just like, that's true, but these were my jobs. These were my thoughts. These were my things. So I did Love Your Brain Yoga, and it was another one. It was great. And I was there and very vocal and talking about how I was trying to do all these different things. And others in the group, in fact, one of the things I just want to bring up is that please share. We all have different ideas. My solution is not the correct one. It's different for everybody, but I remember people telling me, Steve, no, this is your new normal. Like, don't expect a return to climbing and skiing like you used to. Like, hey, guess what? I've been dealing with this for years. You're new to this recovery. Be positive. Know that we have different recovery paths and timelines, and no two head injuries are the same, and we all have different solutions and don't necessarily have good answers here. Like I said, I'm not a rehab guy. I don't know all these different things, but the rehab was some of the things we looked at. Equally difficult was also now I was back and managing my own expectations. I know other people were watching at me and they'd be like, Steve, it's so amazing to see that you're back and you're doing this. And meanwhile, in the own back of my head, I had the thoughts of doing it at a third the level I used to do it. I'm not a mentor. I'm not a model for my employees. I'm out doing guide training, and I'm like, all these guys climb harder than me by 1,000%. I would send out clients out with them over me any day, yet at the same time, I'm still looked at as a model, a behavior, someone who wants to be followed and do these different things. Having these different thoughts were always difficult. We all have advice and we all have different things, and you should listen to your peers and have these things, but hopefully you're challenging those things and seeing what is possible. Because it's complicated. When I first went rock climbing, the truth of it was I was just happy to go rock climbing. And then all of a sudden I returned back to climbing and I was climbing more regular. And guess what? The thing that I used as my own mental health, my own training, all of a sudden I'd go rock climbing and this thought would pop in my head. You don't climb like you used to. You're never going to become an IFMGA guide. And all of a sudden, climbing and skiing was making me depressed. Instead of it being the thing that brought me joy and I solved problems, Andrea and I, if we had a fight, if we had a business question, we'd go climbing. It took out all the other distractions, the exploration, and all we thought about was the movement, safety, this thing's moving through the mountains. And then all of a sudden, I'd go climbing, which was my solution, my therapy, and I'd go home sad that I couldn't do it how I could. And I still am dealing with it because I'm out and I'm still very successful and I get to climb and do these things, but it's not the same as it was. And that is one of the things where I guess what? Flipping the coin, I always tell people in rock climbing, I have no always, never, yes, no, gospel, true or false. There'll be times I'll say, don't ever do this. And then 2 days later, you see me doing that. All right? And that's true. And so guess what? Flipping here, I do have to embrace that there is a new normal. I might not ever finish my pin, but I'm still a certified ski guide and rock guide. And I don't always let myself celebrate those things. And that gives me opportunities to climb and ski around the world. You know, like this spring, in fact, I'm already booked to go back to Alaska. Get to go skiing and maybe do some heli and some ski mountaineering all around the Chugach. Very excited. Yet at the same time, in my head, I still am like, guess what? I'm not in shape. I don't have this. I need this. I need this. I have all these crazy steps and things that sometimes cloud and make me actually have a little bit of fog that I'm all of a sudden, instead of being celebrating and being excited about this, stressed and having all these different things. These exist, and I just want you all to acknowledge that as well. And remember how it used to feel. The casual stuff was no longer casual. And, you know, and that's what also I'm trying to figure out, how do you manage that, you know? Like, this is a crazy mixed climbing route. No, that's not sideways. That's literally the way that that photo goes. I look at that now and I go, guess what? This Steve can't do that. And it might be now that I was 31 then, and now I'm 46. So it might have had nothing to do with the accident at all. It could just simply be I'm old, which is what lots of doctors like to tell me. Well, Steve, you're old now. Sorry, Steve, you're not in your 20s anymore. Sorry, Steve. I'm like, hey, yeah, you know, like after my accident, I was in the wheelchair and all I really did was eat. And, you know, I used to be 165 pounds soaking wet. I'm like almost 200 pounds. And they're like, yep, welcome to your 40s. No. How do I solve this? Good luck. And then all these different things. But yeah, so, you know, it's basically kind of looking at these different things coming up. What are the options? And, you know, I always kind of think about, you know, what's fun? And so I had to fall back in love with climbing and falling back in love with petroglyphs and acknowledge that, guess what? I'm not necessarily, my big fears after the accident was not so much even a climber. I was afraid I wasn't going to be the husband I want to be. I was going to be the father that I dreamed of being, the business owner, the climber, the mountain guide. All these things that were the path that I was kind of following and trying to figure out. And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get back to any of those. And sometimes it does take a little reimagining and things of those natures, and I'm trying to get there. And I'll be honest, not every day is the same. Andrea, if you talk to her, will say, hey, there's a lot of days I tell you to acknowledge all these things I'm saying to you. And they're in my head. It doesn't mean that they're actually planted to a point where all of a sudden I totally believe or understand them, but I try. You know, looking at different things and different routes, these things, this was that public indecency route. I'd be excited to get back and get on that thing. Really train, but it is really, 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 really hard. And so I'd have to be back to one of my peak physical strengths. And sometimes it's just reimagining and refiguring out that maybe that this route isn't the one that I'll ever actually come back to, but there's plenty of other objectives that I do want to pursue. And the reason why it was tricky is that I was always the person who used climbing as kind of the solve. I made the wonderful or terrible decision, speaking on the AMGA certification, is imagine if all of a sudden you were a doctor or a teacher and you decided to do all of your student teaching, final exams, and all of your doctorate work in one season. Because it's possible. And so I tried to fit my ski exam, my rock exam, and my alpine guide exam in one calendar year. Most people spend 10 years to get through all of those, but I just basically had my permits and everything else in fitness-wise. And I passed my rock exam. My ski exam went so well that they were actually, Steve, you got to finish this. We want you to become an instructor for us. And then I went and did my alpine exam, and I failed. And part of that, I had all this stress, and all of a sudden I couldn't figure out why I was having gut issues, and I'm actually even having those again. Well, it turns out all of a sudden one day I got home from ice climbing, and all of a sudden I started throwing up because I literally had such constriction from Crohn's that I never was diagnosed with or known about, that my bowel actually closed off and nothing was passing through me. So I was actually just very sick, went to the hospital, and they were talking about doing exploratory surgeries. And finally, then they discovered that I needed to be on intravenous drugs that would help me solve this. And this was also, now once again, my first thought of, I'm not sure if I'm going to return to climbing. But luckily, I have a crazy wife who's a superstar, literally, who doesn't know how sometimes to say no to me, which she should. We literally got out of the hospital, and instead of being like, we already had a trip planned to go to the Alps, and we were just like, well, guess what? You're up and mobile. You can do things. Let's just go and see. We might not climb the craziest things. But once I was there, I had crazy ideas in my head. I looked at these mountains, and all of a sudden I was like, hey, I was just in a hospital a week ago, and now I'm in the Alps, and I'm already at now 9,000 feet here. We're going to be up north of 14,000 feet once we take the trams up high. What should we do? Well, I put it in my head I wanted to do this. This is a route called the Friendo Spur. It's one of my favorite routes I've ever done, period. Normal people do it in 3 days. They take the Midi, which is a tram that goes up halfway up the mountain, and you stay at a lodge that's on the glacier. You wake up early the next morning, and you run across the glacier, and you get all the way up into the top of the rock section, and then you...
The rhythm, yeah. The rhythm that's best for you is your natural breathing pace. However, if you're looking to find a more steady, slower, grounding breath that kind of supports your nervous system to downregulate, breathing in for 2 counts and out for 2, and finding an equal belly breath, so we call it equal belly breath, so in and out for the same cadence, is really supportive in that way. So if you really want to be mindful of it, using something like in for 2, out for 2, can be helpful. But there's no wrong way to breathe. So, sleep disturbance and yoga nidra. Really, as you can see, 30 to 85% of people that have a brain injury have some sort of sleep disturbance. So it's a pretty common symptom. However, as probably many of you have experienced, it's not always addressed within your doctor's appointments, your rehab appointments, or anything like that. We kind of miss that piece of holistic healing when you are going through your rehab journey. And as an OT, I know that this is something that is not always addressed because it doesn't always seem like the most important. But if you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. So we really should be addressing this more. We also know that poor sleep quality, so if you think about, I always thought about this when I worked in a hospital, it's like the beeping and the cords and all those things leads to poor sleep quality, which ironically undermines your recovery journey as well. So we know that we need sleep in order to recover for our joints, our muscles, our body, physical body, but also our mind needs sleep in order to recover. So we also know that many of these symptoms lead to kind of critical things to address. If you're not recovering, then what are we doing? We're not really going to meet those recovery goals if we're not sleeping to help that. We also know that mental health is often common amongst individuals that have experienced a brain injury. So 1 in 2 people, specifically with a TBI, will receive some sort of mental health diagnosis, such as anxiety or depression. And you can see that only 18% of a general population has that same diagnosis. So that's a pretty big jump, 50% to 18%. We also know that anxiety can be anywhere from 6 to 63% of the TBI population, again, compared to 18% of the general population. And depression can vary from 7 to 63% of individuals experiencing depression. As you all might have experienced, these symptoms often overlap. So symptoms of a TBI, symptoms of PTSD, and symptoms of anxiety often overlap. So we either misdiagnose something or we underdiagnose something because we can't find the common cause. And this is really where Yoga Nidra steps in because it addresses all of them. Yoga Nidra has been proven to support emotional well-being, support sleep, support anxiety, support depression, and support PTSD. So if this is a tool that addresses all of them, even if we can't find the underlying cause, this is so supportive for us to utilize. What is Yoga Nidra, you might ask? It's called yogic sleep. So we're really, it's an evidence-based guided meditation that follows work to shift your brain waves throughout patterns of sleep. So you're shifting your brain waves from your beta to alpha to theta, and then to your delta waves. So we'll look at the brain waves of sleep states in a little bit. But really we're shifting through that while maintaining some sense of consciousness. So it's really restorative and a sense of deep sleep without really sleeping. This is also different from a true meditation. So we did a meditation at the start of this practice. and you were very much aware. I was guiding you through. You were aware of all the things that I was cueing you to do. Mindfulness meditation practices are excellent. Don't get me wrong, we use them all the time in our programming. I use them all the time as a yoga teacher. Yoga Nidra is a little bit deeper because it does shift your brain waves, and there might be times throughout Yoga Nidra that you might not totally remember everything that I might guide you through, and that's okay, because that means your brain is in that deep state of relaxation and is able to kind of find that calm sense. The form of Yoga Nidra that we use most often at Love Your Brain is called iRest. And it's a 10-step meditation practice developed by Dr. Richard Miller. We see 8 steps here. I know there's only 8. There are 10 steps total, but the beginning and the end are like beginning the practice and ending the practice. So I can count. So you can see them here. So it kind of moves you through a guided practice with these 8 steps. And the goal is that it's really accessible. And it's really restorative because at any point you can return back to a step if that is maybe gives a sense of calm or safety. So we'll start by setting an intention. You'll go through your inner resources to identify those about yourself. We do a body scan. We talk about your breath awareness. Great question about your breath because we will talk about that a little bit more. We talk about welcoming emotions and welcoming thoughts and beliefs. And really that's so beautiful because we're welcoming them without judgment. And that's kind of a key point that you'll hear me talk about is we don't judge where we are, we don't judge who we are, we acknowledge the beliefs and then we decide what to do with them. And then we talk about experiencing joy through the practice, and then you rest in your own awareness, and ideally by then you're kind of in that deep delta state, which is beautiful, in that state of deep rest. So I do want to start. I'm going to sprinkle in some baby practices throughout the presentation so you can have a little bit of an experience. If we have time at the end, we'll go through like a 10-minute sequence. But in case we don't, I do like to sprinkle them in throughout. So we're going to start by just identifying that body scan. So again, finding a way to sit in your body that brings steadiness, safety, ease, whatever that looks like for you. And you're just going to listen and follow my guidance as we explore and move our attention throughout the different parts of the body. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to force anything. Just allow your attention to flow. And we'll start by sensing down into your feet. Notice any sensations along the soles of your feet, the tips of your toes, your shins. Notice the tops of your knees, your hips, belly, the rising and falling alongside your breath. Notice your chest, your throat, the tops of your shoulders, your palms, and fingertips, all alive with sensation. Imagine or feel your face, your lips, mouth, cheeks, nose, eyes, forehead, and top of your head. Now begin to sense the back of your head, the back of your neck, your shoulder blades, your elbows, backs of your hands, upper back, lower back, your seat, backs of the thighs, calves, and heels. Sense your whole body supported. From that sense of supported whole body, begin to, from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, notice your whole body at ease, your whole body in awareness, There's nothing to fix or improve. You feel your whole body as sensation. Now begin to sense and welcome any feelings of heaviness in your body. Feel the natural weight of your entire body. With each exhalation, feel your body grow heavier, as if it were a stone sinking through water. Both feet heavy like stones. Calves and knees heavy. Your thighs and hips are like lead weights, and you feel gravity pulling you down. Your abdomen, chest, and back, your shoulders, arms, and hands are heavy and sinking. Your whole head heavy like a rock. And feel the sensation of heaviness with curiosity and openness. It is neither good nor bad. Breathing in here, and as you exhale, you let the heaviness begin to dissolve away. And now begin to imagine and feel your whole body grows light and buoyant like a cloud. You welcome a feeling of lightness throughout your body as if it was made up of air. Your head is light. Your arms and torsos feel as light as a feather. Your legs are light and perhaps weightless. Imagine you are so light that your body begins to float. Welcome this feeling of lightness with curiosity and openness. It is not good. It is not bad. It is just sensation. Breathing in here, and as you breathe out, you let this feeling of lightness go, settling back into a neutral awareness. And you feel your capacity to be with the ever-changing experiences of life. You recognize that sensations, feelings, such as heaviness and lightness, they come and go. Resting back into the aliveness of your body, you take a nice breath in and a steady breath out. And if your eyes are closed, returning back to the group and settling back in. Thanks, everyone. So I mentioned a few benefits of Yoga Nidra for brain injury. Maybe you just experienced one of the reasons why it can be so beneficial. But I do want to talk a lot about some of the specifics of why we utilize Yoga Nidra and what the research says. So Yoga Nidra is really helpful at interrupting those negative thought patterns. I'm sure none of you know anything about that. So really what Yoga Nidra is doing is that through this kind of deeper sense of awareness and unconscious, we are able to plant a deeper seed of intention. So we talked about intention setting as one of the pieces of the steps of the puzzle. And really what we're doing, as you all learned about neuroplasticity.
I just work here, sort of, half the time.
Beth, our illustrious Beth. Many of you know Beth, right? Beth is a leader in behavioral psychology, policy making, and advocacy. Currently serving as the advocacy and policy advisor to BIA, she is dedicated to creating supportive and inclusive environments for individuals and families impacted by brain injury. Her expertise spans a wide range of critical areas, including strategic planning, curriculum development, training, and crisis intervention, with a proven track record of developing effective strategies, building capacity, and leading teams to success. Beth's career is marked by a deep commitment to serving and empowering vulnerable populations with a strong emphasis on behavioral work. In her current our 2 neuro-resource facilitators, which I would also like to add, Beth really still does a lot of neuro-resource facilitation. And so we are so glad that you're here today. So,
Thanks.
welcome back.
Now, you know, the readout. Who am I? I'm Biavt. I'm kind of half here in Vermont and in Chicago. I have a master's in counseling. I have worked in the field of working with people of every single, ability in life. I have been a BCBA for 20-some years now. And I'm also a flight attendant, so kind of very varied, And so what I bring to that is I'm also an individual that has had many, many concussions. That as I age, they're like, oh yeah, we're seeing signs on your brain that you probably did have a brain injury at some point. Oh, big surprise. Kind of figured that through life, figuring things out. I was steered to working with populations of people that I got and understood and what was going on with them as well. I've also had an eye stroke. Luckily, it did not affect my vision that they say. I can tell the nuances of what happened and that there are challenges still with that. What that brings to you today, what can you figure out on the table? Am I somebody that likes to sit still?
No.
Okay. Yeah. My kids always say that, Mom, you never sit still, you never stop, you have to do multiple things at the same time. Growing up, I learned in school very quickly that I was not a student that liked to sit there and just take notes. I had to draw, I had to color, I had to focus on multiple things at one time. Because if I didn't, then I didn't absorb anything and I couldn't take it, it just didn't work my learning style. So I took that into I worked in Connecticut at the Greenwich Autism Program and worked with youth all the way up to adult with any form of neurospicy that you could find. And now I continue that love working with individuals with brain injury as well. And so that's a little bit more down to earth me, other than that blah, blah, blah. So of course, technology is not my first and foremost. There we go. So we'll move on to the Brain Injury Alliance. Today, I like to talk about behavior. It's kind of funny since I also am a full-time flight attendant as well. I see a lot of behavior, y'all, especially right now. I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to going back to work there. My daughter's flying right now. It's not fun. Really want to focus on why I'm talking about behavior. How many of you in here, and I know I saw a lot of hands go up for having brain injuries, how many of you have had someone tell you that they can't work with you or they're going to stop services because of the way you talk, or maybe you're crying, or maybe you can't regulate your emotion and so they stop or they change services on you because they don't know how to interact? Or a difficult patient. So what I like to really focus on as we go into life skills is, why am I looking at behavior? Behavior for me is purposeful. There's a reason for that behavior. What's coming up? Behaviors don't happen for no reason, right? And what people perceive as behavior is a way of you're communicating and it may not be in the way that somebody is able to recognize your communication skills. And so I always really want to focus on that. When somebody says that, oh, they're being challenging, oh, they're having a meltdown in the doctor's office, or, they're yelling out at the gas station because the credit card reader isn't working. Navigating those skills at that moment may be too much. And so how do we work through that? How do we work so that functioning in the world and being able to navigate that so that we can not have limits, and it may not be the normal that was before, but the new normal. I'm trying to pick from you there. I do listen, I was doing multiple tasks, but so anyways, it's their best effort to get your needs met. I have definitely cried more than once in an office. I've had meltdowns because they just don't understand me. Right. Or they don't listen. Yeah. I was at the hospital yesterday. A friend of mine is in the hospital with something that they can't figure out what's going on with them. Here I am, sobbing tired because I'm upset. You know, they're like, why are you crying? I'm like, because I'm mad and that's how it comes out for me. I may cry at this. You never know. There we go. If we only focus on the behavior, we stop seeing the person. And for caregivers, for admin, for anyone, personnel in medical care, I always really emphasize this when I'm doing trainings with individuals because it's so important that we realize the person and what they're talking about and what they're trying to get. So looking underneath that behavior, what's going on. And what I have found from our data collection as a neuro-resource facilitator and through our support groups is a lot of the same thing over and over. When you first have a brain injury, maybe you went to rehab. Raise your hand if you've been to rehab of some sort. Okay. Then you get sent home. How long, or have you had care or rehab after? Raise your hand if you had rehab after. How long? Throw out a number.
7 years,
Good for you.
but I'm loud.
Good for you. Self-advocacy. Unfortunately, not everyone can.
I also have a nursing background.
Good for you. My mom was a nurse. I get it. Yeah.
You talk about rehab. I mean, to me, I find things in life like yoga, for instance,
I know you do. Yeah.
extremely helpful, and that's my rehab.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not like I'm all fixed.
And that's when we get further into my talking about like working on life skills. That is one of the areas that I'm, looking out in the community and finding those things that work for you for those skill sets. Because right now we have to dig and look for those skills, how to gain those skill growth wherever we can. And it can be hard. Understand the why behind your behavior or anyone's behavior. So how does this tie into life skills? Anyone have an idea?
Hard to fix it if you don't know what's even happening
Yeah.
or address it or pick it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my life of I would go into home programs or go into the home and see what was going not well in the home or in the community environment. So I'd be that tag-along shadow to see what was going on.
If the policy is not coming up for a while, or this policy will be finalized this month. Do your best to stay on message, be polite and friendly, and your job is to say what you came to say. Stick with your talking points and remember to ask them if they have decided how they will vote on a bill. And please use respectful language when describing a person with a disability. Please focus on the family as a whole.
Yeah. I got Section 8 housing nationwide. I can bring that, they pay 2/3 of my whatever rent is. So there's a $7,000 apartment, no, $2,000 apartment. Every apartment is two to 2,500 for an apartment. And I can get, okay, with that Section 8, I'll have to pay 1/3 of it. I only make $1,000 a month. So it costs me $339 for an apartment. That will cost no more than $2,200. And this apartment is $2,000.
So you've researched for apartments already?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. And I gotta come up with all the answers myself. I'm kinda hearing that.
What if you get rejected?
Because the people don't wanna have to work. And you ask them a question, a simple question, I know they know the answer. You know, they know how to use the computer and get the answer, but, no, they don't wanna have to, so they just say no.
Here.
Yes, I like the nature end of up here, but I want mental satisfaction, and that's what I wanna go down there to get. Massachusetts, New England, but it's not, it's more organized, city is more organized down here than, and up here, you gotta go to Burlington or, government organization, and yes, I don't know how to get into it, is what I'm kind of saying. I've got all these referrals.com and say da da da. A counselor, she's going to help me check out the information that I have. But these are organizations that run the Section 8 housing.
Okay.
So but I try to get in touch with them and they don't respond. And yet they don't answer the telephone sometimes. And they just kind of block. Well, because they don't have the satisfaction of finding somebody a Section 8 apartment. You know, there's nothing in it for me. I get paid whether I'm sitting in the office or out there finding something. I don't know.
Well, I think
that's an excuse.
Well, yeah, I think it's just, with all this you're telling me, I know you got a plan, but I think that with all those complications, I think you should just stay in Vermont, not move to Massachusetts.
I don't think so. I'm not, okay, because I'm in art. I want to be able to sit home in comfort, and right now, it's involved. My family, born and brought up on dairy farm with 7 brothers and sisters, and father was very successful.
Okay.
And I'm not employed, and I'm not an employable employee because of the conditions that are, or with the condition that I want to have looked at down in Massachusetts.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you come to me with like what you find out, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. I'm just concerned that you may end up homeless, because if you get off, if you don't have a house there and you move there, then
Yeah, well that's, I gotta.
Just, okay, got your banner.